Dr. Strack has spoken to, I believe, any organization or industry that you can think of. Dr. Strack has done leadership training, as well as encouragement, as well as some chaplain duties as well, right? Is that correct?
Well, a lot of chaplains.
A lot of chaplains.
I blow in, blow up, blow out. The chaplains are there.
Yeah,
But I get to speak to a lot of sports teams.
That's right. We were just talking about how you used to do the opening prayer for the Cotton Bowl, when it was the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah, that was the Cotton Bowl prayer breakfast.
Yeah. So, very cool. Well, so let's welcome Dr. Strack.
Well, thank you, man. Be seated.
Thank you.
My name is Jay, and I want to talk to you about this bridge that you're building, right? The bridge course. And there's several ways to look at that. But I want to be straight up with you. I'm here because I kind of feel obligated, because I'm probably the reason they said, you know what, we ought to have a bridge course to help students really be able to maximize while they're here, right? And stress certain things that we need to know that we probably don't know. So I'm probably the reason why you got the bridge course. Because when I came, which was a while ago, I'm an old dude, but still incredibly cool. But when I came, I'd been turned down by 13 colleges. I'd been through 6 broken homes, 6 foster homes, 6 detention centers, possession, distribution, DWI, assault, whatever. So I was like an all-star recruit. They were like celebrating when they got me. And no, in seriousness, I came on what's called academic probation. That means, you take watercoloring. I mean, for me, back in the day, I was lucky to even be allowed to come. And the reason was, I didn't really know all the reasons why. I just knew I'd never done very well in school. Obviously, if you've been turned down by 13 colleges. But I'd given my life to Jesus at the age of 17. I'd just gotten out of a detention center, like I said, for the 6th time. And the Jesus movement was going on. I don't know if you've heard of the Jesus movement or seen that movie, but I promise you, it's an incredible movie, and it talks about California, and I was in Florida, but the Jesus movement really was when I believe the Holy Spirit said, the church isn't getting the job done. And so all of a sudden, the Jesus movement was all colors. And that wasn't true in all of our churches, hardly any of our churches. Wasn't true in the African American churches. They didn't have any white guys, right, like me. In our churches, we didn't. But the Jesus movement was the hippies off the streets, everybody. Everyone was welcome. And I just think the Holy Spirit said, church isn't getting the job done. I'm going to watch what I do, right? Because Jesus is real. I hope you know that. And I'm going to be real straight up with you. I found out at 17, when you first hear about all this stuff, this guy died, paid this awful price, lived a sinless life, did these miracles, and then gave his life for us, and then rose again. When you hear all that, and then you find out it's true, it's a game changer. So when I first started hearing about the gospel, it was too good to be true. Isn't it really, that we could be forgiven? Some of us, some of the things we've done, we know ourselves pretty well, right? I couldn't believe, it was too good to be true. And then once I experienced it, I realized it's too good to keep to myself. So if you're one of those and you got a little bit of religion, years ago we had commercials for Brill Cream. It was a hair styling lotion. And their motto was, a little dab will do you. And I never forgot that, because when I started getting involved with churches, that's how a lot of people are in church. We have religion on Sunday and it doesn't really spill over in our life. So here I am, this freak, abandoned, quite a few times, sexually abused twice. Fortunately, I found out what baseball bats are for. That never happened again. So I'm this kid that was the throwaway kid who just didn't connect anywhere but on the streets. So here I come. I'm in my senior year, and I find out, because I didn't get out of the detention center until November, I'd already missed too many classes to graduate my senior year. But between when I got out of the detention center and even before I went back to school, guess what? I went to the Jesus movement, and about a month after going, I asked Jesus to come into my life, flushed all the drugs, flushed all the booze, all the rats were high in the sewer, I got rid of all that stuff. And all of a sudden, I go to school and they said, Jay, you can't graduate. And the Lord said to me, Jay, go to school anyway. Sit up front and keep your mouth shut. Can you imagine why the Lord would talk to me like that? I mean, go and nip it in the bud, right? Don't say anything, don't bother anybody, sit still and just listen. So that's my background, okay? I barely graduated. The only reason I was able to graduate is 2 teachers that had always been on my case saw the difference in my attitude and the difference in my life. And I was sitting there knowing I wouldn't be able to graduate. But about a week before, several days before, 2 teachers went to bat for me. And they said, now, we can either let Jay graduate and reward him for this great change in his life, or we can have him back next year. And isn't it amazing? The Lord just moved on all their hearts, and they said, we think we ought to let Jay graduate rather than have him back next year. So anyway, that was me, all right? Turned down by all these colleges, so finally I got asked I spoke almost every night. I have a big mouth, and I made a big deal about Jesus, and I was never really intimidated who I talked to about the Lord. So I kept getting all these opportunities, and finally, a graduate, first graduating class at Charleston Southern, picked up the phone, called a guy named Dr. Hamley, first president, founding president, I believe, of the school, and said, Doc, we got a guy, he's a dumpster fire, but God's doing something with him, you ought to take a chance on him. And so that's kind of how I got here, all right? And the reason is, I got to tell you a little bit about my journey, because I'm going to challenge you on your journey. And I'm going to challenge you on what it means to build a bridge. And by the way, and I'm going to ask you to write down a couple things. And let me tell you why, taking notes, and I know this is going to be stressed in the course, helping you learn the value. But let me just break it down. Nobody here but us girls, so let's talk, right? So here we go. You're going to remember maximum 20% of what you hear in a class. A lecture, chapel, course, class, whatever. Maximum 20%. Now I'm a rare exception to that, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Because that's really the only way I can learn, because I'm dyslexic and a few other learning challenges. So listening is about the only way I can get what I get. So Dr. Gersh, when you have me for these courses, read this book. There's 300 pages of this and that. I just want you to know. Your mama. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, so, here I come. And I'm trying to take notes, but I always had a problem, and I didn't know why. And I found out, thanks to this school, you're not just a number here at CSU. I hope you sense that. You're not just a number. I promise you, I've been on probably over 1,000 college university campuses. I've spoken in 10,000 high schools. So I know a little bit about kind of the academic world by, blowing in and blowing out is not the same as being an academician, but you at least kind of get a sense. And just simply put, if you don't take notes, the most you're going to remember is 20%. So when you hear what you're going to hear this semester, all the things this bridge course is designed to help you do. And by the way, never be too proud or never be ashamed. I need some help in whatever it is, because I promise you the rest of your life, you can be an All-American, you can be a rock star, you can be Little Miss that, you know what I mean? We can have a lot of things we do really well, but I promise you in every one of our lives there are going to be several things that are important that we need a little help on. So don't ever be embarrassed by that, okay? And so here I am, and I'm learning. I got to take notes. And you know what? You know why? And here's the statistic I want you to remember: 20% if you only listen. You just kind of sit there. It can be up to 80%. You will remember if you take good notes and you review them. We can learn and retain up to 80% of what we heard. Now, even if you don't reach the 80% threshold, it may be 60%, it may be 70%. That's a pretty good improvement, is it not? And that means you may not have to be here longer than you want to be here, right? Because all of a sudden, some of these things are going to make more sense, and some of these things will actually, believe it or not, become enjoyable. And if somebody would have said to me when I first came here, class in school is going to be enjoyable, I'd have thought, man, they're smoking something, you know. Maybe it's the textbook that rolled up or whatever, but I want you to know it's a fact. So I came in my first semester, guess what? Academic probation, a math teacher and another teacher met with the administration and said, Jay has something going on. And the reason was, and they had me tested, brought down some people from Columbia, University of South Carolina, had the medical school in this part of the nation. And they brought down some folks, and I went through testing, and they did IQ, and they did this, they did that. And it found out I was dyslexic. Now, 46 years ago, I know you're thinking, oh, no way, he only looks 30. But anyway, I want you to know, all those years ago, no one knew much about dyslexia. I couldn't read. I remember being at the blackboard and knowing that everybody in the class is watching, and they'd make me write my name, but I'd write my J's backwards. My name is Jay, but I'd write my J's backwards. And by the time I got to my last name, it was starting to go down like this. I couldn't write on a straight line, and I got a lot of things backwards. And then, of course, when you can't read very well, guess what? You're in guacamole, right? By the time you get to where school really matters. So I've been given this great opportunity at Charleston Southern. Fortunately, they said, this guy's doing a lot of things really well, but some things that are very important is IQ below plant life. Now that's my turn, all right? So in some courses I scored higher, they said, than anybody. And in the courses that really matter, there's certain courses that are essential, right? Again, IQ below plant life. So they found out I was dyslexic. They found out I was A, D, 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 and then they added 3 other Ds, which I thought was tacky. But anyway, so I just want you to know that was me my first year at Charleston Southern. And thanks to somebody caring, and when I found out about the bridge course, I'm thinking, man, amen and effing. Because every one of us have a couple things we struggle in. And every one of us has some things we're exceptional in, and other things kind of you may be like me. Hopefully it's not IQ below plant life, right? So here we go. I ended up getting through college in 2 years and I think two and a half months. And I graduated with honors. And I got a bunch of pieces of paper. And I've written a bunch of books. And I've spoken to a bunch of people, and I've been able to I'm only telling you this so you have some idea. And here's what I want you to write down. You wrote down the take notes statistic, correct? You write that down? Second thing I want you to write down, and just make it first person. I have no idea. I have no idea what the Lord has planned for me. And I promise you, He can take you, whatever you're going through right now, and give you a future so bright. What's the saying? You just got to wear shades. And that's what the Lord did for me. Kid that had been through all those broken homes and foster homes. I married a young lady, my sweetheart. We met in the Jesus movement. We've been married 50 years. That's like a world record on my family going back 100 years, okay? So I want you to know I never had a family. Today I've got 2 daughters and I've got 6 grandchildren. And I'm real excited because 3 of them were through the foster situation. and they were kind of like me. A lot of bad breaks happened in their life. And fortunately, I'm so proud of my son-in-law and my daughter. They, that's what I wish somebody would have done for me, right? So just know, you have no idea what's coming. But you got to do your part. So write down the third thing. If it's to be, it's up to me. If it's to be, it's up to me. Now, I want you to go on a journey. And it's called the leadership journey. And I have to tell you a little bit about my journey. So when I tell you this can make a difference, I just want you to know I'm saying that with feeling, because I want you to know it can make a difference. Fair enough? Now, let's talk about this bridge thing. You're having to go across the bridge. That's what this course is. But the one thing I want you to write down, I've got to build the bridge as I walk on it. And as I went through the syllabus and learned what all the bridge emphasis is, I'm going, goodness gracious. Man, those are given great supplies, tools, resources for you to build this bridge. It's not a bridge that's built for you. You understand? But you're here, and I hope you know where you want to go. At least I knew it. You know what my motivation was? I had no clue where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do. All I knew was I didn't want to be like it had been. And then once the Lord came into my life and I had this big mouth, the only thing that really motivated me was if I could talk to a bunch of kids that were on drugs, or if I could go into the detention center, or I could speak in that high school, or I could go to that, drug and alcohol rehab center, right? So that's what motivated me. But you know what really helped me is when I learned, Jay, do this, do this, do this. And this is my definition. I ended up building the bridge as I walked on it. So there's no bridge to get you from where you are to where you want to go. So if it's to be, it's up to me. So there's a journey. I like to call it the leadership journey. And everybody studying leadership talks about leadership, but please, please write this down. If I can't lead me, I'm never going to be much of a leader. Leadership, you see it right here before you, it's not a title. It's not your name on a parking place or your name on a door. It's not being able to have a meeting and get out all the flow charts and here's what we're going to do. You know what leadership is? A one-word definition. I'm going to give you the greatest definition I've ever learned or ever heard of what leadership is. You know what being a leader means? Bless you. It means you influence other people. The word leadership literally means to influence. So it's not a degree. I mean, I'm very excited about the strategic leadership emphasis that you can get here at Charleston Southern. Dr. Gertis is, and I'm privileged to be a small part of that, but I'm telling you, it's mind-boggling because I wish I'd have known about a leadership degree when I was here, right? But guess what? I learned as I began on my own journey of leadership, if I can't lead Jay, how in the world am I going to lead anybody else? Does that make sense? And no matter how smart you are, no matter how pretty you are, no matter how good an athlete you are, no matter how cool we are, some of you know what I'm talking about. All right? But I want you to know, you got to lead you. And that means when you're discouraged, and that means when somebody's disappointed you, and that means when you're tired, and that means when it's hard. Now, I knew I was in trouble when I went to orientation, and it was hard. That's not a good sign, you know what I'm saying? So I sang the great hymn. I hope you have a favorite hymn. My hymn back in the day was a song called Help Me Rhonda. Okay? I don't know if you've ever heard that song, but you need to look it up. So my leadership journey, I wanted to get on this bridge to get from where I was, and I was doing much better than I'd ever done, right? And then I come to school here, and they help me understand why I couldn't read. And they helped me understand why I couldn't even read my own notes. So when I took notes, we didn't have laptops. I couldn't even read my own notes when I took notes. But yet by writing it down, it still increased what I would remember, right? So there's power in just writing down these notes and reviewing them, all right? So the leadership journey for me was I had to learn how to think. I had to learn how to dream. And I had to learn how to lead. Now this little program, this crazy wild experiment that we started 28 years ago, that's been now in, I think it's 16 countries and 280,000 individuals have gone through it. But we want to help students, and this is what this school is about, and this is what this course is about. But you can begin to get a tremendous head start if you start now. Now, what I do, I like to get high school students just going into high school, so we give them an extra 4-year runway, right? We all need some help. We all need some motivation. So here it is. I got to learn how to think. Does that resonate with anybody in the room? I don't want to embarrass anybody, but does that resonate with someone? I mean to think deeply. And to think for myself, not kind of let circumstances control what I do or some other you know what I'm saying? But I want to think, learn how to think for me. I want to understand, okay? Then secondly, what's my dream? You know what's so beautiful about the analogy of a bridge? That means there's a destination where you want to go. And we're going to talk in one of the times that I'm privileged to get some very valuable and not a whole lot of class sessions. So it's a real gift from a professor that loves what he does to give up some time. But I want you to know, next time we meet, we're going to talk about the power of a dream. And that means, what would you do if you knew you wouldn't fail? What would you try to do if you knew no one would laugh at you? You know why some of us never really say, I'm going to get serious about my grades? People would laugh. If I told them something about it, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do, everybody just laughed. And you know why I got involved with drugs most of the time? I wanted them to think it's because I was involved with drugs and I didn't care, rather than I wasn't very smart and there was something wrong with me. Does that make sense? So for me in high school, that was kind of a self-defense mechanism. So I want to learn how to think deeply. I want to learn how to think critically. Not that you're critical of people, but you're able to discern a little bit. You know, let me think about that. Nah, that doesn't seem to make sense or rhyme to me. You got to learn to think critically. And last of all, I pray you'll want to learn to think Christian. Because if you begin to think based on the wisdom of the Word of God, I'm telling you, you get a quantum leap in your life. All right? So here's the journey. We're on the bridge. I want to get from where I am to where I want to go. Right? And where is it you want to go? Now, the greatest example of a bridge is the Golden Gate Bridge. How many of you heard of the Golden Gate Bridge? In San Francisco. You know about it? There's a book, and I wrote down the title of it. It's called The Enormous Exception. And it describes how the Golden Gate Bridge was built. And it also describes how it's lasted. Because the currents that come in from the ocean and come sweeping into that bay are so strong, it would snap, at that time, any bridge, the way it had normally been built, it would have snapped it off just by the currents. And then there's another problem. The wind that comes in and out is so strong, if it survived the current down here, the winds may snap it at the top. So two things make the Golden Gate Bridge the Golden Gate Bridge, and I want you to write it down for me. Number one, foundation. They drove those pillars It's deeper than any pillar been driven before. Some say it made what the Sears Tower looked like kind of small time in comparison. They had to go deep, and they had to reinforce it by steel and reinforce it by concrete. So they had to pour the concrete down, let it dry, and then pull off the protection so that, obviously it could dry. And so these great concrete pillars anchored it. So you got to have, number one, a good foundation. And that's what God's Word is. Do you know, when I learned the value of the Word of God, and you know what I learned about the Scripture? The Word of God gives us wisdom. From the one who created us, and the one who sees tomorrow the way you remember what happened an hour ago. He sees the future. He knows the past, and he knows you. So there's wisdom, there's school wisdom, and there's a lot we can learn. There's some wisdom students get from going to student leadership, and we're grateful for that. But real wisdom is when you begin to say, I want a solid foundation of this bridge that I'm walking on and I'm creating. So you need a foundation based on God's Word and based on some sound, proven experiences that people have had. Learn from those who've gone before you. Learn from those that tried and failed and then got back up and tried again and failed and got up the third time and did it. There's so much we can learn, but you've got to have that foundation. And I hope you write down, if it's to be, remember, it's up to who? If it's to be, it's up to who? Me. Okay? So, foundation. Does that make sense? And only you can do that. Doesn't matter your background. I didn't have any foundation until I gave my life to Christ, and then as I began my own personal journey, spiritual journey, leadership journey. So foundation, and second of all, flexibility. Those cables, sometimes the winds can get up to 20, 30 miles an hour, and these cables have great flexibility. So you've got deep foundation, reinforced, it seems like 100 times. They've got this unique system of connecting everything together, and then it has the ability to sway. Now, fortunately, it's not like a swing. No fun driving across the bridge that's doing that, right? But guess what? Foundation and flexibility. And you know what flexibility means? I didn't do really well that way. Is there another way? I didn't do good at that. Is there any way I can kind of make up for that? In other words, learn to get, you know what the Bible says? Get jiggy with it, right? Have you read that in the scriptures? You got to keep reading it. Get jiggy with it. Get flexible. Blessed are the flexible. You know why? They don't get bent out of shape. And so you may have somebody studying the last thing they do. And I'm a classic rock guy, so I spend most of my time when I have any free time with a headset on, and but I've had to learn, guess what? I got to build this bridge. I got to lay my foundation. And I got to be kind of flexible about what I think is important and not important. All right? So that's the bridge. You're on the bridge. So leadership, the one-word definition that I love and summarizes is leadership is what? Tell me. Influence. And I think many of you here want to be an individual of influence. All right? Now, what I also want to share with you in the few moments we have, I've told you about my journey, and I've told you about how I was in a hole. I want you to write this down. Some of us in this room are in a hole in one area or two or three areas of our life. Is that a fair assessment? Some things that we got to play catch up on. I call it in a hole. Here's the rule. Rule 1, when you fall in a hole and you're in a hole, put the shovel down. Some of us are in a hole. We didn't have any choice. I didn't have any choice who my family was. this and that and all the things that happened. I certainly had a choice when it came to breaking and entering. I had a choice when it came to drugs. I had a choice when it came to being in a fight. I had a choice of dropping out. I had all those kind of choices, but guess what? I want you to understand, right, that only you can put the shovel down and quit digging the hole you're in. And that's what most of us do. And the hole gets deeper. And the hole, you know what this course is designed to do? Help you fill in the hole. And one session, one semester, that's not going to fill your hole up completely. But first of all, when you learn to throw the shovel down, that's a pretty good deal. And you know the habits I'm talking about. You know the things we do in secret. And one of the great leadership principles is the value of integrity. And integrity literally means wholeness. There's not part of your life that's one way and another part of your life that's this way. In math, they have an interesting description, a term, integer. You ever heard of integer in math? It's a whole number. And integrity means I'm in darkness when no one's around. I'm the same person when I'm alone that I am when I'm with people. In other words, I don't have my private life. In fact, here's one of my favorite sayings. Please write it down. Private victories precede public victories. All right? Now, we've talked about the journey. We've talked about the value of taking notes. And now I want to give you a word that I promise is essential, and it's called excellence. I want you to make this word, excellence, part of your vocabulary. Let me read to you a couple things. Colossians chapter 3 in the New Testament. Colossians 3, 23 and 24. Whatever you do, do it from the heart. So when I say lean in, when I say put some skin in the game, when I say take this seriously, when I say if it's to be, it's up to me, you know what it's saying? Whatever you do it from the heart. And by the way, we've done a lot of things we didn't do for our family. We've done a lot of things for our friends. We've done a lot of things to fit in. No. We're talking about now. We're going to do some things for us because we're the only ones that can build this bridge. So whatever you do, Colossians 3 says, do it from the heart as something done for the Lord and not for people. And knowing that you will receive the reward of an inheritance from the Lord. You serve the Lord Christ. So I love that phrase, whatever you do it from the heart. Now, what does the word excellence mean? Now, we use a lot of terms and we throw it around. What does the word excellence mean? It comes from a Latin word, and it means to rise above. So when I talk to you about doing things with excellence, or when you come to class and you're being challenged like you're going to be in the weeks coming, it means you want to learn to rise above. I don't want to stay the way I am. Can I tell you something? One time my grandfather said to me, we climbed up, he said, Jay, come up here. He had the ladder, and I climbed up the ladder, and there was a bird nest. And I knew at one time it was filled with baby birds, right? I guess that makes sense. But when I looked in, all the birds were gone. And he said, Jay, what's in the nest? I said, it's a bunch of mess. The baby birds evidently just messed in the nest. And do you know what my grandfather said to me? He said, Jay, when somebody keeps messing in the nest, nobody wants to be in that nest. Not even the baby birds. So, I don't know if you're going to study this in the syllabus in the course that's coming, but I'm telling you, let's not mess in the nest. You know what I'm talking about? And that's your private world, and that's what you do when you're alone, and that's what goes on that nobody else sees. So the word excellence means, look at it, rise above. And the number one symbol throughout several thousand years of history, the number one symbol that motivates, it's on coins, it's on the seals of ancient civilizations, it's verses in the Bible. I mean, we're talking about this has been a symbol for a long time, and that's the eagle. So I want you to write down the greatest symbol of excellence is the eagle. And the eagle is able to rise above. And I wrote down a couple statistics that is pretty remarkable. If an eagle is flying at an altitude of 1,000 feet, 1,000 feet high, he can easily spot a prey up to 3 to 4 miles away. I also want you to know an eagle has eyesight that's so great that it's almost like looking in binoculars. And an eagle has eyesight so great it's 3 or 4 times better than any human. And so simply put, eagles can fly as high as 37,000 feet. So the eagle is a symbol of what? Spreading your wings and rising above. Do you have some stuff in your life, in your past, stuff going on now? Yeah, we need to put the shovel down, but what's even a more beautiful picture? We need to rise above. And 3 things make an eagle an eagle. I want to be an eagle. Now, I'm a Dallas Cowboy. The Eagles kind of that bothers me, but anyway, especially now that they're really good. But anyway, I want you to know I want to be an eagle. And I'm not too proud to say. Now, sometimes I'm being an eagle. There's been a lot of times that, I haven't been an eagle. So what makes an eagle an eagle? Number 1, focus. Focus on what matters most. Please write that down. Focus on what matters most. Focus on what is the most important thing I could do today. There's one of my favorite people on the planet. His name is John Maxwell, and he's a prolific leadership expert, many would say, one of the most popular by book sales, anybody on this subject. John Maxwell says, the single greatest leadership trait one can have is vision. Vision. Don't just see the mess in the nest. Don't just see this far in front of you. Don't just settle. Please write this down. Eagles soar while most everybody else settles. You want to be an eagle? You want to rise above? Look at me. I have an out-of-control temper. I had severe learning disabilities. I had some real things. I had made such a mess and dug such a hole. Listen to me. I want you to understand, you can rise above circumstances. You know what the word circumstance means, don't you? The stuff that gets in the way. Literally what it means in the Latin. The stuff that gets in the way. My youngest daughter went to Harvard. And she was doing quite well, and she had a job at Cambridge, working for a professor. She was soaring. One day, going across the road on a snowy day up in Boston, she's a Florida girl, and so a car hit the brakes so it wouldn't, go through the red light, and it hit the brakes, but because of the ice, slid through and hit my daughter. And so my daughter had worked so hard to have a certain grade point, and had worked so hard to graduate by a certain date, and guess what? Her grades went down some. And she didn't graduate by a certain point. But guess what? She got up and she graduated. She did very well. So I just want you to know sometimes stuff gets in the way. You may be here at school and all of a sudden your grandmother gets very ill. All of a sudden a friend has a great problem. There's going to be real things that come up, right? So just brace yourself for it. So you got to rise above circumstances. So eagles have focus. They have vision. But guess what else? They also have, I'm trying to think of the easiest way for you to remember, but is to be faithful. Do you know eagles mate for life? I'll take it from a kid, went through all those broken homes and a bunch of foster homes. Mating for life, man, that sounded like something that was impossible. When I had my reunion, 50th year, my high school was called Marijuana High by the governor of the state of Florida when I was my graduating year. You think that's bad? They put a sign out front, high school. Now everybody knew. But anyway, you'll get that after lunch. But I want you to understand, okay? I want you to hear me on this, that there is a way for you to rise above all these things that go. There's a way that you can let the Lord work in your heart. And there's also a way that you can learn to be faithful. What does it mean to be faithful? Can anyone count on you? Now, I got some buddies. I love them. But I could count on them about 1 every 10 times. You got a buddy like that? Now, don't point. That's not nice. But some of you right now thinking of some of your friends, right? You know, you look to them. You're hoping you can count on them. Hello. All right? But faithfulness means you can be counted on. You're going to make every effort to do the right thing. You're going to stay true, hopefully, to your faith. And notice, we're at a distinctive Christian university, and I'm going to be real straight with you. A bunch of stuff that we learn at school is just a bunch of stuff if it's not also we have the privilege of being in a foundation of faith. Would you agree with that? So this isn't grandma's religion. It's not granddad's religion. It's not Uncle Bill's religion. It's got to be your faithfulness. Stay true. And then number 3, and by the way, I said they mate for life. Think about that. They mate for life. And I was telling you at my high school, my reunion, 50-year reunion. Now, I'm an old dude, but remember I'm what? Really cool, okay? So just keep saying that. Maybe you'll believe it in a couple of years. But I just want you to know, 50th anniversary, class reunion. By the way, the cool table. You remember the cool table from high school? The cool table was looking a little rough, all right, 50 years now. And you know, a great thing about age is you realize all the things you lived and died for when you were in high school, most of it's jive. You know, trying to get at the cool table. So guess what? A guy stands up and says, wait a minute. You know, they've done some surveys and people were nominated for the, and this guy stands up, grabs the mic and said, and I'm going to be real straight with you, all right? Said, wait a minute, everybody. I just heard something. It's like an acid trip. I just heard that the guy that's been married the longest to the same woman out of our entire class is Jay freaking Strack. You have got to be kidding me. And another one of my buddies, you know, because that's half the fun of being a buddy, taking a shot. I mean, hey, you know, if somebody's not taking a shot at you, they're probably not your real buddy. Because, right, I believe to be a real buddy, we need to embarrass and harass. You know, those that matter to you. You got to keep them on their toes, right? And this other guy stands up and says, worse than that. This guy's written over 25 books, and he started laughing. He didn't even know we had a library the whole time he was here. Now, I only tell you that to just remind you, listen to me. You can do all this stuff, but you got to want to. You got to care. You got to take all you're going to learn in these courses. Here's where this is. Here's where that is. Here's the best way to study. Here's the best way to take notes. You're going to hear a lot of practical stuff. I promise you, because look at me. I've been at hundreds of them. There's hundreds of universities that have never, ever thought to do what Charleston Southern tried to do with this bridge course. And I, for one, am very grateful. Okay? So, you got to be faithful, right? And that means eagles mate for life. And I'm kind of proud of the fact that that's a world record in my family, right? Being married that long. And I love my wife more today than I did when we got married. I mean, she's amazing. And can I let you in on one thing about what happens when you really want the Lord's will and you ask the Lord to show you the right one for you? And we're starting to get at that age we think that way, right? We're not just, you know how it was, yeah, man, she's cute, he's this or that. But now we're starting to look for something a little more. I got up here, and remember, I'm dyslexic. I spoke, I think, every night but 3 or 4 nights my first year being a student here. I got invitations to speak all over the state. Now, I only had 2 or 3 messages, but I was moving around a lot, so it worked out pretty good, right? And so, guess what? My wife, who got off work at 4, I'd pick her up. You can be anywhere in South Carolina in about 3 hours. Isn't that about right? Wherever it is. And I would drive, and she would read to me my assignments. She'd read it. And I could listen. We didn't have audio books back in the day. By the way, that is a gift from God. Audio books has got to be in the Bible somewhere. I'm still looking for that term. It's got to be there. But for guys like me. So she read to me as we went. I'd speak, and then we'd drive home, and I wanted to chill out, listen to some music. Oh, no. We went over what she had read to me. And you know something? When I got that degree, I got it with honors. I was able to go on and get all this stuff, excuse me. And guess what? Her name should have been on every one of them. So I just want you to know, the Lord is going to make you complete. The Lord is going to help you have something that helps you survive all the guacamole that's going to be thrown at you. You know what I mean by guacamole. There's a lot of guacamole out there, right? We're up to here sometimes in guacamole. So focus, faithful, and what's the last one? You ready? You got to have stamina. You got to be able to fly not only with the current, but you got to be willing sometimes to fly against the current. And you got to finish what you start. So if it's to be, it's up to me. And then I want you to write a prayer. Dear God, help me. How are we doing on time?
30 minutes.
Another 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Man, it's a good thing I love listening to me, isn't it? No, I'm kidding. All right. I'm my favorite speaker, but I don't want to bring that up. So I have a definition of excellence. So if it's to be, it's up to me, and then the rest, I want to finish. I want to finish this, Lord. And you may not finish in record time. You know how I think I got through so fast? I think the same thing that happened my senior year. Man, Jay's doing so good. And he wants to, they had challenge. Did they still have challenge courses here where you could take the test at midterm and whatever you made was your grade? Do they still have that?
I don't know that they do.
Okay, well, we need to meet and file a protest. Okay? But anyway, I did everything I could, all right? But guess what? You can do so much more than you ever dreamed. And I promise you may not do everything as great as you thought. You may not get the grade you hope. But you know what? Even the times I didn't make what I wanted to make, look at me. I was still about this much higher than I'd ever been. So if it's to be, it's up to me. And number 2, Lord, I want to finish what I start. And we can have a date for it and a goal. We're going to talk about that later. Goals are very important. But I don't want you to get discouraged if it takes a little longer and if it's a little harder. And please, don't be discouraged to ask for help. I'd read a bunch of stuff and hear the teacher talk about a bunch of stuff, and I'd lean over and go, this is what? Is this for real? Did I hear this right? This is crazy. No, man, it's real. And then they talked to me about why it was real. And you're going to take subject. It's just us girls here, right? So let's talk a minute. I took courses here that I know the Lord was going, why in the world are they learning? I mean, you know what I'm saying? We take courses on stuff, and and you know, believe it or not, I was a little opinionated. I know, I don't want to shock you, but anyway, I mean, so I'd say to some of the, I said, you know, I remember, because here's what happened to me. They only offered Greek once, you know, Greek 101 was year 1. And the second year of Greek was year 2. But to be able to meet your requirement for a language, which I was using Greek for, guess what? They didn't offer the courses to keep up with what my schedule was. So I did what any Christian would do. I walked in, saw the dean, and I said, man, we got to fix this. I went and saw the president. We got to fix this. And by the way, if you're doing well and you love people and you're trying to help a lot of people, can I be straight with you? There's a lot of people going to help you. Does that make sense? Now, if you're one of those who don't care about anybody but you, then guess what? That's probably how it's going to be. But be the person. So I was always doing things the school asked me to do, always trying to go the second and third mile. You know, we pitched a tent on campus because we didn't have a chapel and had a crusade. A buddy of mine and myself, we preached that for 3 nights on this campus. And hundreds of students were saved on this campus. But we didn't have a place to do it because you can't use, back then, they took government money and you couldn't preach in a building built by government loans back then. So guess what? We went and got a tent. There's always a way. And a lot of people said, I don't know if you're allowed to do that, you know. And I said, well, man, I thank you for telling me. I'll work on that. And as soon as the crusade was over, I went and said, hey, is it all right? Sorry, all right, but there's always a way. Learn that. Write that phrase down. Get it tattooed somewhere.
Right.
I don't want to be invasive on where you want to get, but there's always a way. You with me? You feel me? All right? There's always a way. So I remember going to the president, Dr. Hamrick, and I said, Dr. Hamrick, the guy teaching philosophy, I'm telling you, Doc, he's on something good. He's on acid or something. I said, he's crazy. He said, now, Jay, and I said, no, I'm being honest with you. I said, I take the course, and you can ask anybody in the class. I said, the other day he was teaching, did you know that the evolution is not opposite of what the Bible says, that every man has a tail this long, every human being, this long. I mean, this is what this guy, so I said to the president, just us girls, he's lost it. He should not be teaching. He said, Jay, you know he's my brother-in-law. So I said, the only thing you can say, then you already know. You already know he ought not be teaching that class. And then another time I got in trouble because he was talking about insomnia. And he wasn't able to sleep at night. Insomnia. And he kept saying, do any of you have any, like maybe your grandparents had a recipe for insomnia? Or does anybody know any home remedy? You know, I mean, he was being sincere. And he talked about he couldn't go to sleep at night. And he said, does anybody have anything that you know that would work? So, being a good student, I raised my hand and I said, bring them to class. And so, you'll get that later, but I just want you to know, because that'd put anybody to sleep, but I just want you to know that sometimes you got to help everybody see the big picture. Now, did I always convince everybody? No. So now I'm learning I can't graduate when I want to graduate because there's no way I can get my language requirements. Fair enough? And school couldn't help it. I mean, they only had one professor, and this was the way it was. And so I went and took it to whatever it was called. The student council had a special something. What's the term for that? You take a concern or a problem. You all have that still? What's that?
I don't know what he is.
Yeah,
Some kind of appeal.
Well, I knew most of those guys. We were brothers, so we were tight. I said, guys, we gotta come up with something here. So I'm appealing, and everybody's going, no. Finally, we reached a compromise that if I would take German lit, Russian lit, and Spanish lit, and read all the books required, right? Spanish literature, German literature, all this stuff. And so, one of them was Russian literature. And I had to read something like 15 of the classics and in those various subjects. It was the biggest waste of my life. Can I say that? You ever felt that way about something? But let me tell you the backstory. Probably 5 years after I had graduated, going on, I was in Russia. And we were going to help a minister, because ministers in communist Russia, back in the day, Soviet Union, were treated horribly. This guy was dying, this minister. There was no way, they didn't have the treatment. The United States had the treatment. So a congressman and I went, and we petitioned the Politburo that they would make, and there was 2 or 3 people on a committee from the Politburo of Russia. And by the way, I met the guy that I had to deal with in the office that Lenin had, Lenin's own office. So there I am, and he's saying, there's no, I'm using a Spanish accent, sorry, but anyway, but there's no way that this can happen. I appreciate your concern. I believe it's a good faith gesture, And I said, and so in the middle of all that, I used an illustration from Russian lit. And I quoted a prominent writer. And it was about, you could hear the heartbeat under the floor. Somebody will know that book in a little while. And I want you to understand, when I said, sir, I'm praying that you'll hear the heartbeat. And I don't want him to be buried because no one cared enough. And I said, there may be someone that's not a person of faith, who's not a Christian, and maybe they need help. Maybe we can help them get to the States and have that. And I said, there may be times in the future we're coming because you have abilities that we don't have. Now that's called kind of work in the room. But anyway, but I used a quote that kind of really swung the deal. He said, I can't believe you know that. And I said, man, there's much we can learn from your history and from you. And guess what? I learned that in the course that I had let everybody know was the biggest waste of time in my life. You understand the point I'm trying to make? If you'll do this right, do the best you can, give it what you got, the best you can, get help, guess what? There'll be times that you're going to look up and go, I can't believe. Now I know why I had to learn that. You got to understand, this thing called a powerful God, this thing called God's world, this thing called life of abundance is all real. And I'm not smart enough to come up with 99% of the stuff I use different places. But much of what I learned here gave me that head start. Fair enough? Here's a definition of excellence. Do we have that, Walter? I don't know if we do or not. One more. Excellence is particularly important. Do we have that? All right, I guess not. I don't remember what all we sent. Oh, let me read you a quick quote. Excellence is particularly important when you're not going to be able to copy all this. It's pretty long. If you'll let me know, I'll make sure you get the accurate quote. Excellence is particularly important when the pressures of sheer survival, is that part of what we're talking about? Number one, you got to survive. You got to make a life for yourself. You got to make a life for your family one day. You're going to stand before God and give an account of what you've done with your life. A lot of people have sacrificed to help you even get here. Isn't that true? So we're talking about survival, first of all. We're going to survive. Now, I don't think you're here because you want to just survive. Wouldn't you like to thrive? Wouldn't you like to do well and find out? And you may not know it now, but you'll find on the journey, I think this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. All right, so notice, excellence is particularly important when the pressures of sheer survival and the pressures of mediocrity are particularly intense. The primary reason for this, and we must know why excellence is so important to survive these pressures, is because excellence is bound up in the nature and character of God. God is the grounds of all true excellence. He is the one who fills any definition of excellence. He fills it with meaning, and He is the reason why. And here's what I want you to remember. Try to write down just a sentence or two. We cannot, maybe make it personal. I cannot, right? I cannot be content with lackluster mediocrity. I cannot be content with lackluster mediocrity, comma, half-hearted effort. Half-hearted. Not whole heart, right? Half-hearted. Halfway. There's another term for doing something only halfway. Believe it or not, I'm not going to say. All right, but anyway, which is a miracle. So we can't be content. I can't be with lackluster mediocrity, half-hearted effort, or, are you ready? Substandard scholarship. Substandard scholarship. Can I translate that last one? Just doing enough to get by. Just doing just enough to get by. Without God, who is all true excellence, if He's not our starting point, our discussion of excellence would be hopefully inadequate. If God's not our starting point, our discussion of excellence, and we've talked about excellence, to rise above, guess what? Would be hopelessly inadequate. And by the way, I'm going to define mediocrity for you in a moment. But somebody explain to me, if you would, please. I know you're not shy. What does the term half-hearted luster mean? Does anybody know? What's the term half? Yes, ma'am. Did you raise your hand? I'm sorry. But you wanted to. You know you wanted to. What do you think? Since you have been picked on unfairly, I'm only going by, okay, I'm only going by what some people suggest. But anyway, since I'm picking on you unfairly, see, I got your back.
Thank you.
What do you think it means, half-hearted?
Not give something to the best of your ability, or giving it just a little bit of energy, not your full off.
Have we ever been guilty of that? Anybody in the room? I don't want to brag. I lettered in it. 4 years. All state. When it came to doing something half-hearted. All right? You understand? Now, let's talk about what a leader must rise above. Now, we get breaks. Are they allowed to have a break? Or how much time do we have?
You got about 10 minutes.
Oh, well, I'll get my break in a minute. 10 minutes, I'm insisting you get a break. Fair, I'm that kind of guy, okay? Here are some things that leaders must rise above. Number one, carnal self. Write down that term, please. Who can tell me what that means? Who are we talking about, carnal self? Anybody know? What do you think that means, carnal self? The word self kind of gives us a little hint. But what do you think that's talking about? Who's that talking about?
Ourselves.
Ourselves. Yes, ma'am. Me. You talking to me? You know that line, right? You talking to me? Right? Yes. We be talking to you. All right? And there was a time I had to talk to me. Carnal self. Now the word carnal, years ago, your parents would go to the store and buy a can of chili con carne. And that means chili with meat. And it'd be in a can, and you could buy it, and people put it in a pan, and they ate it. All right? You know what this means, carnal? It means fleshly. Fleshly. Half-hearted, lackluster, mediocre. Can I share with you a big quote I had in my office for many years? I want to put an end to average. I put that up for me, my office. I want to put an end to average. That's most of America. We're average. No big deal, nothing special. Not, we're doing better than a lot of folks, but we're not doing quite what we wanted to do in our heart. So what is it? You gotta rise above, isn't that what the word excellence means? You gotta rise above you. Those fleshly desires. I've been battling my weight since I was probably 6 years old. Okay? And then I was a junkie. So there was a lot of things in my life, right, that were fleshly. Not necessarily all beneficial. So I just want you to know, if you want to rise above, you want to be like an eagle. And remember, eagles mate for life. And by the way, I should have told you this. Write this down about eagles. An eagle will never settle for a sparrow's nest. Does that make sense? An eagle will never settle for a sparrow's nest. Do you think an eagle could fit in a sparrow's nest? Could he raise a family in a sparrow's nest? And by the way, eagles mate for life. Some animals in the animal kingdom, man, it's showtime. So eagles mate for life. So don't settle for a sparrow's nest. Another quote that I promise you've heard 100 times, but I love it. If it's to be, it's up to me, right? If it's to be, it's up to me. And the second part to that, when all is said and done, you ever heard that phrase? When all's been said or done, there's always far more said than ever done. So write that to yourself. When it's all over, when you finish this semester, when all's said and done, there'll be a whole lot more that was said than was done. And every one of us can relate to that sometime in our life, and sometimes just the moments of, we are fleshly. We're in this flesh, right? We do get tired. We do get overcommitted. We do have pressures. And some of us have anxiety. Some of us have a lot of things going on. That's why you need the peace of God. So you can rise above your carnal self, number one. And here's what I wrote down. I promise you're going to like this. Write this down under carnal self. I am my own worst enemy. If I were to ask some of you, do you have any enemies? Some of you may have to go back a year or two, or you'd have to, But we all have some enemies. We all have some folks that are not our favorites. We all have some folks that are trying to stand in our way, always saying something about us. And that can happen here on a campus like this. I remember one time in the library, a guy came up to me and said, Jay, man, I heard you were in a revival downtown at a big church called Citadel Square. How'd that revival go? How did it end up? I said, man, I can't believe it, but it went unbelievable. Well, how many were saved? And I said, well, this is what the pastor said last night as he closed out the meeting. And it was several hundred. And this guy came to me and asked me, I said, where were you this weekend? He said, well, I'm preaching a supply, which means, I'm filling in a church for several weeks. I said, man, that's great. I said, what'd you preach on? Now, do you know, a little later, I was behind a bookcase, and this guy walks up to 3 or 4 other preacher boys and said, well, I just saw Strack. Guess what? All he wanted to do is talk about how many people got saved. Now, folks, that's not quite how it went down. In fact, I went out of my way to say, man, where were you? How'd that go? Man, that's great. So listen to me. None of us are above, right? None of us are above certain things that can bring us down or discourage us. Most of the time, I'm my own worst enemy, though. The second thing I wrote down, I need to get out of my own way. Now, it's one thing when somebody's blocking traffic, right? And there's one thing when somebody's barely going up the steps and you're late for class, right? There's always times where want somebody to get out of the way. Can I be honest with you? You need to get out of your own way. Does that make sense? A little bit? Okay. Yes. Time. Last of all, Lord, help me not Pearl Harbor my future. Lord, help me not Pearl Harbor my future. And if I may speak on behalf of the world's greatest professor who loves you so much, trying to get this just the way we talked about. But you can pick up 4 extra points on the next test. Did I get that right?
Yeah, homework grade.
Homework grade.
Yes. It's not, don't sell it too much.
6 extra points. All right. Now listen, what does it mean, don't Pearl Harbor your future? Tell me real quick. Going once? What do you think of me? Take a shot. Take a shot. Anybody? Don't Pearl Harbor my future.
Don't blow up your life.
Don't blow. Very good. Don't blow up your life. Anybody else? All right, look at me. Last thing. We knew Pearl Harbor was going to be attacked by the Japanese approximately 4 hours before it happened. The message came in to the State Department in D.C. If my memory's right, it was a Sunday morning, the wee hours of the morning, the night crew was working, they ought to be tired and sleepy. And it came in on the routine line. The military back in World War II, before World War II, they had what's called the urgent line and the routine line. And somehow the message that they found, they saw the carrier and they knew they were in position to attack Pearl Harbor, and it was sent to D.C. And if you've ever watched the movie of Pearl Harbor, when it's about an hour into all the damage and people dying and ships sinking and people drowning, what a horrible day, one of the worst days in history of the United States. It showed an officer getting a piece of paper. And the movie didn't explain it, but he got mad, threw it in the water. Duh. Yeah, I think they're done an attack because it had already been attacked. So here's the message. Don't treat some of the things you're hearing in this class as routine. I would take some of this stuff as urgent. And look at me, I'm not paid a nickel to be here. I'm only here for one reason. You're it. You're the most important people in this school. Some of you in this room, I promise you, you don't blow a lot of minds. It's kind of fun to blow people's minds. You know this? It's kind of good. Don't say what. Your mom. All right. God bless you. Doc?
Thanks, Dr. Strack. Thanks. Let's give him a hand. All right, make sure your name is on the notes, and then drop those up here on the way out if you've got questions for Dr. Strack. I'm sure he'll